right. All right, so I called a meeting, call to order this meeting of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. It is 9:30 a.m. What is today? Today is Wednesday, August 9th. Can we start with roll, please?
Ms. Brawley, Ms. Bronga, Mr. Constant, Mr. Cross,
Present and accounted for.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Martinez,
Present.
Mr. Myers, Mr. Perez Verdia,
Here.
Mr. Rivera, Mr. Solt,
Here.
Mr. Volland, Ms. Zalatel.
And Ms. Saladil actually notified me that she's not going to be attending, but sent her questions in early. I do think we have a couple of people who joined us on the phone. Will those who are on the phone?
Oh, yeah, this is Karen Bronga. I'm on the phone.
Thanks, Karen. Is anyone else, any other members on the phone right now? Okay, and we, for the record, we've been joined by Ms. Brawley as well. Okay, well, let's get started. Chief Crow, do you want to come up? I think you're first on the agenda. And just a reminder, if members want to get in the queue, if you're on the phone, you can just send me a text. I'm happy to get you in the queue. All right, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. I'm going to go a little out of order. I have my, I want to give an MIT update. So Sean's going to give that MIT update and introduce a few of our people, our new MIT members, if they can make it here.
You know, it is super nice when I get to come and talk about something fantastic, and MIT is at the top of that list. So we got MIT rolling. I don't know, we've been up to 6 teams for a couple months now. So we're just starting to get in the swing of things. We're primarily working 7 in the morning until 1 o'clock the next morning, and still determine whether or not we want to go 24 hours, just, call volume and when they're going to be best utilized. And the wide range, which we've got Officer Adolf here, who is one of the officers that's been actually the original officer that's been doing this work for over 4 years, close to 5 years now. So feel free to ask her any questions, but the wide range of work that they're doing is pretty phenomenal. We're also, I'll give, as I usually do, give MCT and the fire department a shout out as well. And we meet with them on a monthly basis to make sure our division of work and clients is appropriate. So, they take on the nonviolent folks that have that are in mental health crisis and devote a lot of time and energy. And we tend to focus on the more violent and people that are involved in criminal activity as well. We're heavy into the diversion, mental health diversion and criminal diversion, and pretty much you name it, MIT is going to get involved, try to solve the problem long term. So they're a phenomenal bunch of people. They're really energetic, and I wish I could do half the work that they're doing. So if you have any questions for them, Chelsea, you can come up.
Just for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Myers on the phone, and I haven't seen questions yet. I have just a couple to start us off. I'm curious about the if there's a relationship between the camps that we have right now and the calls that you're fielding. Is that an area that you're spending a fair amount of your time?
So I can tell you. So I can tell you from a mobile crisis team perspective. I mean, we go to the calls if there's a mental health component that's involved, and we have been to the camps, 3rd and Ingra, and we primarily, and we've gone to the one across from Beans Cafe, the Carlac on Carlac Street. So we go all over where we're needed if we know that there's a mental health component or a crisis component. Absolutely, we respond to those. Yes.
Okay. And just the other one is the I'm one of the underlying reasons I think that this program is in place and is to divert calls. And so I'm curious about where we stand with that. Can you give us a sense of the number of calls that we're at and how that has shifted over the last year or two from what it previously was?
So as far as the numbers, I don't have any numbers with me today.
Okay.
Do you have any?
I'll pop in. Yeah, we can certainly provide numbers.
Okay.
I think what we're starting to see as we get into 3, 4, and 5 months is we'll be able to quantify a little bit better how many patrol calls for service were taken away. So the teams respond to both dispatch calls. Obviously they look at the call stack and respond to calls that are already in progress. They intervene when officers are transporting to Providence Hospital to try to either divert or take that call load off of patrol. They're also looking at calls that have criminal components that they're going with also mental health. So I would say give us a couple more months before we have some solid, consistent data, and we can say, we've dropped it by 10%, 20%, something like that.
Thanks. Yeah, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, the one thing I'd just be interested in the long term, and not necessarily the calls, is just response time. I think that's really what it comes down to, is making sure that our officers, because when they're getting bogged down with inconveniences, then they're not able to focus on severe problems. And so I'd be interested to see how the MIT and MCT programs are helping with our response times for those issues that are more sensitive. So thank you.
Mr. Salt.
Thank you. So with places like Third and Ingra, is any recommendations from you? I mean, should we put a full-time presence there? Do you have enough calls to justify it? Any way we can make those camps better for those that are there and for the neighbors that surround that area?
Are we talking specifically from MIT or just a policing or a community problem response?
Probably both. Just whatever those camps need. We get a lot of reports of illegal activity and problems within the camp, but then of course we see a lot of reports of activity around that camp, just like we did with the Centennial Park. So does it make sense to put a full-time presence there? Again, I know that's tying up a resource, but how do we better control those areas?
Well, I think there's a start right now with where we have security there that are trying to monitor vehicles coming and going and people coming and going. So there's some sort of structure is always helpful. But when you have a large group of people congregating together and the difference in needs are, depending upon who is there, is pretty wide and pretty significant. And as a city, do we have the resources that can go in there, not just from a policing standpoint, but again, across that large spectrum to go in and respond to those needs? I mean, so far, I haven't seen that capability at this point in time. And until we get that capability, this is going to continue to be an issue from the criminal end all the way to the social end, dealing with mental health, substance abuse. I mean, the whole spectrum. And so, I don't know of any area in the city, even combined right now, where we've set it up to be able to respond to that.
Thank you, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, I have probably a more basic question, but I'm interested in understanding the kind of the role or the function of the mobile intervention team, and then separate from the mobile crisis team. And so I understand mobile crisis team is in the fire department, but maybe you guys could just describe the distinguishing between the two, and especially, just as an example through the dispatch process, how does the dispatcher decide which of those teams to deploy? And I know you mentioned transports to emergency rooms and issues involving criminality, but beyond that, kind of what is the logic to separate those two?
Well, we have started meeting with MCT a lot to kind of iron some of those things out. And to my understanding, and as we're developing kind of our program, there is a list of individuals that we've developed that MCT is better equipped to respond to, they have good relationships with. And so dispatch has that list. However, if there is any sort of lethality involvement, when it comes to like a suicide call, then we'll be dispatched to those things. And it's definitely something that's being ironed out still, and we're still working on. But with that continuous communication with MCT, we're able to kind of differentiate those things. But when it comes to someone wanting to harm themselves and having the ability to do so, then we are kind of coming in on that. But again, we work really well with them. And if we get a call for someone who we know that they've been working really well with, then we'll call them and be like, hey, do you guys want to check in with this person? And we really collaborate with them. So it's definitely a huge collaboration. I don't know.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate that there's that you guys are performing kind of different but related functions.
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that distinction, and I know how important the work is. My question was around when do we know when there's the component that sends it this way or that way, right? And so as it's being ironed out, I appreciate the by name list and kind of tracking data. I guess my question is, what happens when, in fact, there's a person on the street having some sort of episode? I mean, people see things happening in the community. What is the pipeline or the pathway of response from a call to what? And if there's a person having a tremendous issue right in the street, and it looks like it's hard to understand, what happens when people make a call? Do we remove people from the streets? No. Where do they go, and how do we get them the help they need? That would be helpful to understand for the people of my constituents.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So of course, every situation is different, but I can tell you a really cool story that we just experienced this week. We were called for a trespass, and it's a regular call for us. We go there, and it's a person that's camping out. So they're starting to lay out all their stuff, and they're just hanging out at the school at the track. We go talk to them. It turns out they have a bank account with $4,000 in them, but they don't have an ID. So they have a paper copy of a Washington ID. They ended up in Alaska at one point. They cannot have access to their account because they don't have a real ID. So we help them go to the bank, and we get them identified via some other means that we have access to. And he is in turn able to draw out money. So we help him get temporary housing at a hotel for a week. We go to the Golden Lion, and he has income. So we said, he has income, like he can afford this. He had to introduce himself. We helped him do that. And now today we're placing him there. So he paid his rent and basically is going to be there for a month, and then however else he chooses, longer if he wants to. So that's the work we're trying to do. We're trying to get people off the street, connect them to services that are available. And like with the Golden Lion, that's an awesome opportunity that we have right now if somebody has income. That's one example out of a million. The great thing about this team is we think outside the box, and we really utilize all the resources that we have in town that we can have access to, and look at the bigger picture. What's the long-term outcome? What's the best outcome for that individual? We connect to services. We connect to doctor's visits. We connect to, getting them to medications. If they lost their meds, we can go to a place where they bridge the meds until they can go see their doctor. We really, really focus on trying to keep people out of the emergency rooms and out of jail. And if there is a criminal component where somebody gets arrested, we advocate for them to go to CRP court, for example, or Veterans Court. And that's kind of the mission of this team, in addition to, offloading patrol and taking those calls from patrol and really giving a specialized response to these people. The clinicians we have a lot of variety of expertise. There's clinicians such as Chelsea, that's really, her specialty is juveniles. So then we have somebody that has a lot of experience with autism. And we try to use those skills to really cater to the people in a community as we can. So that's the beauty of this team.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate the diversion that Chief, you mentioned before. I remember when we stood this team up, we wanted to make sure we didn't have a warrior mentality. We wanted to make sure we had a guardian caretaker community kind of relationship mentality. And so that's in fact happening. I really appreciate that. I'd love to have that data also of those stories. So beyond anecdotal, that we just kind of have more context to the data as we go through it. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
It looks like those are all the questions. I want to follow up on that just for a moment because I'm thinking about the public who may be listening to this and thinking about their role in helping, and when we're supposed to call and why we're supposed to call. I'm thinking of just the last couple of weeks and thinking about, driving past somebody who is laying on the side of the road, and thinking, I don't know if that person's hurt. I don't know what's going on with that person. Should I call? I'm thinking of people that I've seen over the past, month, walking across, Northern Lights Boulevard and look confused and look, but I don't know. I don't want to get them in trouble. Right. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about what you hope the public does to support you. Like, when do you want us to call? When do you want us to be involved in this work so that we're not creating, we're adding value to what's going on? So I don't know if you can just share some thoughts about when and why do you want people to call you and report what they're seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think we have our own line as well that we're creating too. And so you don't have to necessarily like flood dispatch with all those things, but it's, if you have a concern, I think it doesn't hurt to call and we can kind of check in with someone. And maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe they are having a lot of bad days put together and they need some resources. And so as far as the community goes, like, we're here to get creative. We're here to help people. And I'm biased in saying that I think a lot of the calls that come through dispatch are mental health related, but that's my role to be biased in that way. And so, I think that the more, we're open to a lot of things. We're open to doing things differently. We're open to getting very creative. And like Ruth said, we have a lot of different specialties kind of on our team. And so if one person doesn't necessarily know, then we know who to ask to kind of find some resources to connect. So we want to meet with people. We want to talk to people, even if they don't need our help, we want to connect with them. And that's another part of it is, we want to divert from the hospital and from the jails, but we also want to go into the community and build relationships and kind of change that culture as well. So
great. Thanks. Now, it looks like I have a couple more, Ms. Brawley and then Mr. Solt.
Yeah, thank you. This is going back to the question about camps, and I know this is obviously not solely in your purview, but beyond the kind of Third and Ingress site, I know that gets a lot of attention. It's probably the largest one. What other areas of town do you see as kind of hotspots, or basically where people are congregating, including Midtown or other parts of town?
So I don't know. I think we respond a lot to Midtown Delos and Cuddy Park, and then Sullivan Arena in that area as well. The gardens, we respond there quite a bit. And I mean, that's like my personal experience. I don't know patrol wide where there's camps really everywhere. I mean, literally you can spot camps pretty much everywhere. So I'm sure there's responses throughout the city.
Thanks. And I know that's something that the Parks Department and the Health Department are tracking too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Solt.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. Probably can't even imagine some of the things you see here, deal with on a daily basis. I do appreciate what you said. You offer that compassionate side. You're people just like us. You're here to make a difference. And I wish more of the public would see this side and that story. And it's on us to tell this story to our citizens of what you're doing. And it makes a difference. If anything, the story you told us of that one person, it makes a difference for them. Tremendous difference. And one at a time, we'll get through this. So thank you.
Thanks. I do have another question from Ms. Branca on the phone.
Hi, thanks. I may have missed this, but if you felt like someone you were encountering in the city was having a mental health crisis and it was violent, I think the procedure is just called dispatch. And that's what we did on our incident that happened. And mobile crisis didn't roll for that. So are there certain hours, like you're on 9 to 5, and so you're not working in the evening? So that's one part. The next part, if there's someone who's been identified as violent and having a mental health crisis, is there any way to shoot out pictures to next door? If we had some warnings to people about this individual, they would have steered clear of him and probably prevented further problems. So I just wonder if you ever do that, like you got the missing kid and we see pictures on Nextdoor or sent out through your, I can't think of the name of the service now that you send out, Nixle kind of thing. Do you ever send out, this person is dangerous and you should stay away?
First part of the question is 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Is our coverage time. The second part of your question is, I'll give you a great attorney answer. It's a little complicated. We have to understand that, first of all, when we have people that are in crisis and there's appears to be violent tendencies, the majority of these folks do not prove to be violent to other people. It's more of a harm to themselves than others. We're also talking about medical information potentially. As you can hear from the officer and the clinician up here, our view of these people as human beings is pretty high. And so, although I completely understand what you're trying to get at, it's not as simple as we have someone that's in crisis, so we're going to blast their picture out. That tends to create an environment that is a little less compassionate on a community level, maybe. So is it possible we would do that? Yep, it's possible, but it's probably going to be a lot less likely. It's not going to be the norm, for sure.
Thanks. I hear that. That's very, that's an important point I hadn't thought about. I just thought people could avoid would be good. And then do you just call dispatch? And if it's 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., dispatch would get a hold of mobile intervention?
Yes, ma'am. That's the easiest way, is to go through dispatch for both MIT and MCT.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. That was great.
Thanks, you guys. Ruth, you can leave. Chelsea. So before we go on to the next thing, I just want to, I know it's your meeting, but we just talked about MIT. Do you want to get an update on MCT? Because I know it's not on the thing, on the agenda, but fire department's here, and I'm not sure if you want to talk about MCT at all.
Yeah, I'm okay with it with a very short update. I'm concerned about the amount we have on our agenda. So
I was going to apologize because they're not not going to talk today. So.
Yeah. So no, I think that we can make sure we have time for them at a few future meetings. So
all right. So let's move on next. I want to introduce two people. Orrin Carpenter, he's my fiscal manager, and Josiah Jones, he's my IT manager. And they'll be the ones that can answer all your technical questions. So the next item, we're going to talk about the special tax levy, the funding, and body cameras. And something happened in the meeting last night. One of the comments that was made, I'm not sure. I think this is pretty prevalent out there. I'm not sure it was made as a dig at the police department or whatever, but the comment was made that we've been stalling body cameras. And I think an important thing here is to go over where the money is, what we spent it on, what the timeline has been, to just show people that we haven't been stalling anything. We've been working on body cameras from the very get-go. I think the biggest mistake we had a chief that said they would be deployed in December of 21, which was, I'm not sure where that came out of, but he obviously doesn't realize that we're involved in two contracts that are multi-million dollars, and they have taken up a lot of time. So the first thing I want to go over is what we spent our money on. And if anyone's interested, I do have a timeline of everything for body cameras and Hexagon CAT RMS, the digital evidence management system. So let's go over the money. So 2021, we received $1.5 million from our tax levy. We also received $250,000 from the alcohol tax, which we didn't spend, which I don't know what happened to that money. I assume it went back into some fund somewhere that somebody spent it already. 2022, we have 1.5 million. In 2023, we taxed to the max for 1.840, and I'll show you why. So we've taxed for the special tax levy 4.84 million. Next slide, please. So CAT RMS, this is the biggest project. Back in January of 21, when all this was going forward, we told the citizens of Anchorage, we told the assembly members that our number one priority was a CAT RMS system because it is on the brink of failure. And if it was on the brink of failure in 2021, the chewing gum and duct tape is barely holding on now. It really is. And it's really key. And I want to go over some timelines for the CAT RMS project.
Chief, can you just make sure that we understand what a
Oh,
CAT
okay.
RMS is?
I explained the CAT RMS, please.
So CAD and RMS, it's the computer-aided dispatch and records management system. It's basically the system when someone calls into 911, the dispatchers load the call. That call information goes out to the officer. The officer can then see all that information that's been loaded in, and they go out and respond to the call. The RMS is going to be where the officers or the records personnel or detectives will write the report. They'll submit the report, goes through the approval process, and it's maintained in the RMS. So it's really the brains and kind of heart of the department. Without this, without these two systems, it would be very difficult for the department to operate.
So with that, the tax levy passed in April, and I know there was a big push with the murder of George Floyd for body cameras, and this was a technology tax levy. And unlike vehicles, which I have no control over, we do have a control over this money, and there was nothing that said we had to spend it immediately on body cameras because we did have other needs. And CAT RMS is our number one priority. So in June of 21, we had put the RFP together and put it out for bid. We were given the okay to negotiate in October of 21 with the CAT RMS system. It went before the assembly, I believe, in March of 2022 to get approved. And actually, no. Let's see. We get the ability to negotiate in October of 21. The proposals were due to us by December of 22. We ended, let's see, I think I get this wrong. Nope. What's the date on that one? I think I'm looking at body camera stuff here too.
We got the approval to negotiate in October of 21.
And then we signed the contract in 22.
Correct. It would have been early March of 22.
So in March of 22, we signed the contract. The contract we signed was for several $1 million. It's over 5 years. I have that in a slide somewhere. So the contract we signed was for $4.4 million over a total of 5 years. The first project year, the project in year one, the total price was $2,906,000. That took up the first 2 years of the tax levy. So $2,900,000 took up the first 2 years of the tax levy, 2021 and 2022. We couldn't in any way go forward with digital evidence management, which includes body cameras. We couldn't even go to contract. We couldn't even talk about that till the approval of the budget for 2023. With that said, we still went forward in December of 22, and we put it out for RFP, and we got 3 people interested. Once the money was approved for the 23 budget, we were given the go-ahead in January of 23 this year to enter oral interviews with the vendors. What oral interviews meant, we put together a panel of people that evaluated the 3 vendors. And that took several months to do. But we had demos, we had all the different vendors came up here to Anchorage. They were here in March. And after that, the evaluations were done and they were put together in April of this year. We were given the ability to negotiate a contract with the winning evaluator. Negotiations don't take 2 days. Negotiations happen in May, June, and July. That's when we went with Axon, and the final ROA was sent forward to purchasing on July 24th. we have been constantly working at the body cameras, digital evidence management system. There's been no delay, no intentional delay. There's a reason why we all did this, and the reason is we need CAD RMS. And the first 2 years of the money were all taken up, and we couldn't go into another contract with a company to do body cameras, digital evidence management until actually the start of this year. And that's what we've been doing. We've been working at this forever. Granted, we've been working at everything's been the body camera policy. I know that's taken a lot of things, but we've been doing these things simultaneously. Josiah's been working his butt off on the contract and working to get the contract done. And Deputy Chief Case has been working on the policy. So we've been doing this. So I think, does that provide a little clarity to everybody that we haven't been intentionally delaying anything. We've been working our butts on this, and we've taken the sack. Everyone loves to pile on the police, and we have broad shoulders, so we're used to that.
All right. I think I do have a question for you before you move forward. Ms. Brawley, do you want to ask your question now?
Yeah, that'd be good. And it's on the CAD RMS, just to understand. So last night we had a discussion about data, and I know I'm remembering from probably several years ago now, kind of, APD bringing up the issue of wanting to upgrade the data system, be more data informed. So maybe you can just clarify, is this related to kind of that prior need or discussion, just having to upgrade the system? And then specifically, I'm interested in whether this new kind of upgraded system is going to be able to produce reports more easily. Because I'm familiar with, complex databases. They often do have reporting functions, either built-in reports, or you can kind of customize those reports. So I'm curious, because I think there's an interest in the community and overall in increasing access to data, not having to use, records requests that can be costly. And so just understanding what's more possible within the data system before we move on with the body
The
cameras.
simple answer is yes. This system will bring us into the 21st century on the ability to gather data and produce reports. This is a game changer for us.
Quick follow-up. I also wonder, is the reporting system going to capture maybe demographic information of folks involved in incidents? So I don't know if those are pre-built in, and I know certainly you're not doing demographic surveys of everybody when you're doing calls, but I think that's also an area of interest, is kind of understanding, just looking at that from an equity point of view.
Do we have people in?
All right. Yeah, some of that information is going to be captured. So this new system will be NIBRS compliant. NIBRS, the federal reporting system that basically most law enforcement agencies are required to report to. And some of that information does capture demographics more than our current system does, because our current system is not NIBRS compliant. So yes, we will be capturing some of that data.
Thank you. And so I'll just state again that, I know I'm interested, and I believe the community is interested in, having a better data informed picture of our, certainly our policing system and kind of the public safety incidents. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come online.
Mr. Cross is next.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. When I first got on the assembly, I was one of those individuals that was aggravated because of the little information I had on why it wasn't proceeding as quickly as, I anticipated. And so as I've gone through this process, I've learned just how complex it is. The other side of this, I still haven't come to, and I'd be interested to be a question for legal is, since our job here and since we're sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, we individually, we have rights to privacy. And so I've always been curious about that balance about, maybe an officer goes into my home because of a legitimate call, or maybe it's just a mistake. They hear someone reports a loud noise. They don't know what it is. And yet that video footage has pictures of maybe my children, and who knows my possessions on that. And then what is the process to make sure that my rights are being respected before that video is just released ambiguously to the public? But at the same time, when there is something that's violence, that people need to be informed, and they need to make sure that there's a connection. And I haven't figured out how that works yet. And I think that is obviously for minds much better than mine. And when I think about this process, I learn more about the amount of video storage and the individuals have to go through and tag and locate, and the amount of background that it goes into to make sure that the information is accurate with reporting that privacy, and just how much it takes to properly vet that data. Otherwise, if we launch something prematurely, we open ourselves up to a litany of lawsuits, particularly when it comes to privacy rights. And so as I was one of those individuals very agitated that it wasn't going forward through this process, I've basically learned that it's better. It's like if you were making automobiles, you wouldn't just stick an automobile out there with 3 mismatched tires and stuff just because someone wants an automobile. You would want to make sure it meets all the safety requirements before you launch it. Otherwise, you open yourself up to a whole different set of litany. And so I really appreciate this communication as far as letting us know what the process has been along the way. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to the slide.
Oh, actually, I've got a couple more people in the queue here. Next, Mr. Soul.
Thanks. Real quick. You say in the presentation that the CAD RMS will be available Q1 2024. Do you have an estimate for the initial deployment of body cams and then when you expect the project to be completed?
I do. So, well, it all depends on you guys. You guys have to approve the contract on the 22nd. Also, and I think there's the misconception, the allocation of funds, the other thing, basically all that allocation of funds, if you look at the $4.84 million, I gotta look at this slide, the $4.84 million. So we didn't spend any money in 2021. We had to move that money to 2022. 2022, we didn't spend very much money. So that's the 2021, 2020, 2022 money is sitting there. We had benchmarks and other things that were met this year. We have the $1.84 million. So we spent a lot of this money that we spent of the 2.752, we've actually spent out of this year. Meanwhile, we have 1.5 million, 1.58 for whatever that money is left in the fund that's designated for technology. All we're doing is we're taking that money from the previous fiscal year and moving it into this fiscal year so we can spend it. We're not getting more money. We're just moving the money. It's like basically moving money from a savings account to a checking account. That's what we're doing. We didn't think that took 2 weeks we didn't think that required public testimony. That's our bad. We thought we could just move the money. So that was our mistake. Otherwise, a lot of this would have been done. But anyway, that's the money that we're trying to allocate, the 1.5 something million. We're trying to just move that from 2022 to 2023 so that we can get on with the next step. And I'll show you. As far as the body cameras, if everything's approved, we expect to sign the contract almost immediately after we get the approval and the money transferred. We expect, we've talked to Axon. They will start shipping body cameras, in-car video, and the equipment up here in September and October. They are going to send their technicians up here to show our radio shop people how to the radio shop people will know how to remove the hardware from the current system we're using, which is WatchGuard. They have to remove that out of vehicles. Then they have to put the new system in there. I know there's been contracting issues here, so I'm not going to get into that. So they're just going to show the radio shop how to do it. Once they show the radio shop how to do it, we're at the mercy of the radio shop to actually install the hardware into the vehicles. Once that's done, the officers, each car that comes out will be paired up with the officer and a body camera. They work together. They hit the street and they'll go. We'll do a 30 initially, and we think the first body camera will be on the street in November. Hopefully the 30. I can't say how long. We need to see how long it's going to take to actually outfit them. You guys know, I sent all you guys a memo that we're getting 350 in-car video systems. If I have 350 cars left, we will actually put 350 in the vehicles. That's going to be a lot dependent on the radio shop, how fast they can do it. If we just do some quick math, if they can do 2 a day, 350, that's 100 and something days, and those are work days. So we're looking at the middle of next year before they would all be equipped.
Great. Mr. Martinez, and then I think Dean is next.
All right, just for clarity, thank you, Chief. You mentioned you connected the CAD RMS project in your narrative to the body cam implementation expectation from the public. So my question is the body cam implementation dependent on this system?
No, not at all.
Okay.
There's no interdependency whatsoever. It's the money.
Okay.
So again, it was for technology. We used the first 2 years of technology money, 2021 in 2022 to put basically the down payment on the CAT RMS project.
All right. So yeah, just I'm giving free advice this week. I would not connect those in the way that you described. I would be more direct about the need of the duct tape and the bubble gum, and just be real clear about the organizational importance of that system. And so my question would be, when we upgrade that, how durable will we be then? And when will we need to upgrade that again?
It's a 5-year contract. And as long as we're happy with the software system, the only thing we have to look at is server upgrades in the future. The physical hardware typically gets upgraded every 7 years, roughly 5 to 8 years, right around 7 years. So in 7 years, we'd have to look at doing some hardware upgrade. But all we would really be entitled to do with Hexagon is to continue paying that annual maintenance. So there wouldn't be a large chunk of money like there was this time up front to do an entire new project. We wouldn't be looking at that in 5 years.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Gates.
Thank you. I just thought that what Mr. Chief Crow was describing for the funding and how it's been going forward is on the next 2 slides forward here. If we could advance that.
Yeah.
And I think that's helpful.
So just to finish up with, Randy pointed out, so we do expect,
No, if you don't mind, Chief Crow,
Okay.
sorry. I also wondered, the special tax levy is a funding bucket we have, of course, dedicated to this purpose. But are there some other funding sources that you could draw on? Or are you getting to that? Thank you.
yes. Just to go back to slide 2. So we do estimate to go live 2024 first quarter for CAT RMS. We meet benchmarks all the time. There are two benchmark payments for 2024, which we didn't get into here, but we can account for all the money going forward as well for this thing. So slide 3. So this is our DEMS project. And this is how, when I say DEMS, that's digital evidence management system. That's body worn cameras. That's the in-car video. That's the interview rooms, and everything ties in. It also ties in with our phone. We have an Axon app here on our phones, which allows the officers to go out there and take pictures and download them in the system. So this brings everything together. So the funding that we needed for this year, as you can see, the cost for this year, $893,000 for the body camera for the initial year. Some of that is offset by grant funding. The grant funding was actually more than that, but because we only went with 350 body cameras, this pays for some of the body cameras themselves. It doesn't pay for any of the in-car video or the interview room. So we did get a grant from the federal government to pay for body camera hardware only. So that did offset a little bit of the cost for us this year. And if we didn't get that, we probably wouldn't have been able to sign this contract because we're like just barely meeting it. This cost for this year for the in-car video is $671,000 and some change, and then the interview room is roughly $60,000. So the total needs for this year for the digital evidence management, which includes the body camera, is $1,172,288. And then if you go to the next slide, I want to wrap up with to show you how diligent we've been at spending this $4,800,000 because everyone wants to know where it's gone. So the 3 years worth of tax levy money, if you take the $4,840,000 minus the $2,752,000 for CAT RMS expenditures through 2023, the digital evidence management system, that leaves us with $915,000. And again, because these are 5-6-year contracts, the body camera contract is 6 years, 5 years. The Hexagon CAT, the CAT RMS is 5 years. There's costs associated with these for 5 years, and this money will do another appropriation next year to roll this money forward to 2024, along with the tax levy for next year, which will pay for those.
I have myself in the queue, and then Ms. Brawley is here as well. Just sort of going back, appreciate the information, appreciate the presentation. You also, I understand you received some questions from Ms. Zalatel as well. Did you receive those? She had mentioned
Did
that
she
had,
email them to me?
I think they were emailed to her to
Okay,
you. So
she must have just sent it to me.
okay. So because I know one of the things last night we had talked about that this is also an opportunity for us to ask questions related to the
contract.
the contract itself. Yeah. So if there are questions around that, I think I'm not super interested in going back too far in the history of this, but I just wanted to say, having been involved in this conversation with Chief Dahl, with Chief McCoy, and now with you, and that a big part of the narrative of why this was delayed for a long time was the policy and the debate around the policy and the legal interpretation around the policy. And so the long delay that has been this, I think the feeling of it being delayed is much more from my perspective than budget. And why it was delayed that long and why we went through that amount of time, I think we can debate. But the most important thing from my perspective is that we are moving forward. We are purchasing the cameras, and we are going to get them out on the street. In terms of the contract itself, you had said that I want to understand this, because in the item that was there last night, it's titled body cams, but it is much more than that. And so I want to understand the initial purchase and that the public's very aware of that this is much more than just purchasing the body cams themselves. And then the second one is you had rattled off some numbers, and I want to be really clear about how many you're going to begin with. So we have a clear expectation. And then third is timeline. You had said November. So just, what's in this contract? You don't have to go through all of it, but it's more than body cams itself. What can we expect in terms of the numbers that we're going to see initially, and when?
As far as the language, that was not done by us. We actually put digital evidence management system. That was changed by someone in purchasing, because obviously that's what people want to hear. But what this includes body worn cameras. It includes the 350 body worn cameras for the officers over the life of the contract. It includes in-car video systems. In-car video systems we already have those. We currently have them in a lot of vehicles. It's the WatchGuard system. So this is a replacement of old WatchGuard systems. That's for 350 vehicles as well. It also includes 10 interview rooms. So we'll have the same company. All the data, all the video will be in one system, be easily accessed. It'll just having the same platform for everything that we do. It just makes it a lot easier. And hopefully it will make it easier for the migration of data from us to the prosecuting agencies. For the initial rollout, we've said 30. And you've been part of the discussion from the very get-go. We've been saying we want to try 30 because both the municipal prosecutor and the district attorney's office has concerns of whether they're going to be able to take our data and actually go forward with it. We want to work out the bugs. We think 30 is a good number. I think when we go through a couple months, we'll be able to use this system. We think this is a good system that they should be able to, the migration of data should happen seamlessly. We're hoping that we can work out the bugs in the first couple months, so that going forward, starting in January or even December, if there aren't any bugs, just as we get the vehicles equipped, body cameras on individuals, once it comes out of the assembly, comes out of the radio shop, the officer just puts his body camera on and rolls out. So it'll be a slow progression, one at a time. We're not going to do 350 at a time, but we do intend to do the 30 initially. And it'll probably be ones or twos at first, because it's going to take a while to get all these vehicles out.
Okay, great. I have two more people, and I think we'll move on after to that. I'll just say that I know that there is still a great deal of concern in the public around our policy and around the release of information and all of these things. And I would just say that is still a topic that is something that we need to discuss. I think that we want to both get these out on the street, get it moving. But that conversation about the policy surrounding this is something that I think many members of the assembly and I hope that the department are open to continue to talk about and to discuss, so that we find a policy that both meets the letter of the law, but also is something that responds to the needs of the community. So,
So I'll read the question from Meg, if you don't mind. So Meg said, based on the tax levy handout, is it APD's intention to fulfill the body worn camera contract under consideration to request that we institute the maximum allowed tax levy each year during the duration of the contract, or will the request depend on any active fund balance availability? So for the digital evidence management contract that is under consideration, not only body worn camera, it is our intention with both CAT RMS and the body worn camera, we know what the costs are going to be for the next 5 years. We will evaluate every year what our anticipated costs are. That's just like we didn't tax to the max for the first 2 years. We knew this year we would need the full amount of the tax levy. We will look at that every year based on what our projections are for technological needs. And if we think that we need the entire 1.84, we will ask to tax that. If we don't think we'll need those, we'll tax just the amount that we need.
thanks. And I have two more people, and I would just encourage the closing comments to be brief. Thank you. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. This is a question about, I guess, the circumstances at which the footage might be released. So I guess the issue that's on my mind is I'm going to call back to the old show Cops, right? And I know that there's been a trend in other places to, I think, to utilize this footage. And I'm not sure if it's some kind of contract with a media company or something where basically it's being used, for other purposes separate from, dealing with an incident or looking backwards. So I'm just curious if anything in the policy or a contract prohibits that use by a third party or if there has been any discussion about future, basically, are we going to see APD on a TV show anytime soon?
I can tell you that across the country, people make a lot of money by doing public records requests for body cam footage. And then they make people look foolish, and they make a lot of money because people like to laugh at other people's demise. We expect to see an increase in people requesting body cam footage, not for personal use, not to use against police, but to actually, just like Kevin said, they want to see what the inside of Kevin's house looks like. They want to see what his dog looks like. And they want to take that and they're going to request it and put it on some TV show to make money off it. We do expect that. And that's where we have to look at the policies that are in place, the concerns, the redaction of body worn, the privacy issues that are addressed already in our Constitution. So I think Sean is probably more apt, can talk about the privacy issues and what we think we'll see with cases like that.
How much time do you want me to take to answer this question, ma'am? I've said many times the privacy issue is the number one concern. I mean, it just is. Particularly in Alaska, particularly right to privacy, when the government comes in your house and we're recording audio and video, the police department shouldn't have a concern about that, but we do. We are all Alaskans. We live in this community, and that's a huge concern for us.
And maybe that's something that I'll follow up with you guys offline, but I'm really concerned about potential commercial use, not because you guys are pursuing that, but I think that's a discussion that's worth having. Thanks.
Mr. Solt.
Okay, real quick, related but unrelated, APD and the community have a growing problem that is affecting our ability to respond to calls, and it's getting worse. So this past week, I went to the vehicle maintenance shop over on Fairbank Street, and the age of our fleet, the condition of our fleet is becoming a serious problem, and it is actually costing the municipality more money than it would if we got back into the sweet spot and a replacement cycle. So maybe to the chair, we could have a future work session at that site, and to the broader assembly. We absolutely need to work together to try to solve this problem and earmark funds, dedicated funds, to get back into a replacement program for these vehicles. Because again, it is costing us money, and we are seeing vehicles break down during responses, and they can't attend those calls. So imagine what kind of issues come out of that. And I know if we go over to the site and take our tour, we'll all have our eyes wide open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solt. Thank you, Chief. Anything else before we move on?
Nope. And that's going to be a topic for next meeting. I'll have one of my captains who takes us in. He's going to go over my fleet and just, unfortunately, it's not my fleet. It belongs to Fleet.
Yeah.
It's just, I lease them from Fleet.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Chief Stragi. I agree. Yeah.
They got that show too.
Welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Chief Shiragi here. I am joined by firefighter paramedic Jason Russell and fire inspector Dane Wiseman. And the first item on our update is our Fire Explorer program. I'd just like to say in the way of introduction that even though the Explorer program is not a component of the Anchorage Fire Department, it's something that we support through in-kind support, and it's something that very strongly supports our efforts to reach into the communities that we've had trouble reaching into in the past. And with that, I'll turn this over, with your indulgence, to Firefighter Russell.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? All right.
Good morning.
Oh, there I am. All right. Thanks, Chief, for introducing me. Like I said, my name's firefighter paramedic Jason Russell. I'm with Station 4 off of Tudor and McInnes. I've been with the Anchorage Fire Department for about 6 years now. Excited to talk to you all about the Anchorage Fire Explorer program. It's a program that's very near and dear to my heart. When I was in high school, I was an explorer, and now I have the distinct honor of being the lead advisor for the post amongst many other advisors that help this post operate and function. So I'll be kind of using my slides for prompts. Please feel free to ask me any questions along the way, and I'll try to make this quick. I know time is precious. So the Anchorage Fire Explorer Post 264. So we are a 40-year-old program. We are one of the longest running Explorer programs in the nation. We started the Explorer program back in 1982, back when exploring first became a concept and a program that was offered. And our mission statement is empowering tomorrow's leaders and preparing the next generation for Alaska's first responders. We just came up with that mission statement this last year to really try to keep it simple as to what we're here for. So not everyone that comes through the Anchorage Fire Explorers becomes a firefighter or a paramedic or a first responder even. But a lot of them do go off and do pretty amazing things likewise. Can I have the next slide, please? So about the Anchorage Fire Explorers, and can I just get a toll before this last year? Because I know that I handed out our report to the community, all the assembly members here, but can I just get a toll before this last year? Have you heard about the Anchorage Fire Explorers? You all had. That's wonderful, or at least half of you had. Okay, that's fantastic. So that's good for me to know. But exploring, Scouts of America. So the reason why I have that up there as a first prompt, it's a very important thing for us to know. Exploring is a term that is coined by the Scouts of America, formerly known as the Boy Scouts of America, and is a sub-program under them. So every rule that we have, every ability that we are able to do, every exposure that we're able to give a young man or woman is all orchestrated and conducted through the Boy Scouts of America. I work very closely with them, and they tell me what I can and cannot do. And then I also supplement those rules with the fire department's rules. My chief and the executive staff of the AFD also tell me what I can and cannot do. And those two combined things help me and my other advisors operate our program. Like I said, we're a 40-year-old program. We're one of the biggest and, in my opinion, most robust programs. Empowerment, mentorship, and growth. What we do is we take young men and women who either want to be part of something bigger than themselves or want to become first responders someday, or firefighters or paramedics or police officers, and we give them the tools to become so. Empowerment. We had a young group of women. You'll see in the lower left-hand picture this last year. We did something we'd never done before. Our social media presence was solely done by me for the last 3 or 4 years, and I absolutely hated it. Every single time I had to go on and make a post, I knew it was the right thing to do because it helps us get out there and tell our story. But this last year, myself and my friend Dane to my right, who's another advisor, we decided we were going to do something different. We decided we were going to make a social media committee. And so we took these 4 young women and we said, here's the password, here's the access code, you have our social media, you have our Instagram. And we gave them an advisor that oversaw that. And with that, they tripled in 9 months' time our social media and online presence through pictures, through little, I don't know, TikTok videos or whatever. All that is so beyond me, but they love it and they were really good at it. And that helped us get out and tell our story a little bit. And it empowered these young women, in this case, our committee, to really broaden and expand their wings and fly a little bit. We have another story of a young woman. Her name's Erin Gates. She's actually also one of the young women in this picture. Erin was a senior in high school, going to East High School. She decided to become an EMT through the King Tech program. And through that program, I ended up going there and recruiting, which is where I ended up getting a lot of the explorers. They come through, they want to become firefighters. They go to the EMT program. They learn about our program through that class over at King Tech High. So she wanted to go into the military after high school. That was her dream. That was her goal. And she wanted to go to West Point. She was getting her EMT 1 so that she could boost up her resume. After Erin learned about our program, she applied, got into the program. And through this last year, Erin has absolutely thrived. She started doing, she started the social media committee. She led that committee. And then she went on more and more ride-alongs that are offered through our program. So it's where we take young men and women that want to be firefighters, and they come in, they do ride-alongs with the licensed paramedics, with the firefighters on the rigs, ambulances mainly. And she got to go to a cardiac arrest, right? Very, very dramatic, very fast-moving, very high-paced, tense call. And Erin got to do CPR, and this is all allowed through the Boy Scouts of America. But she got to do CPR on this person, and at the end of the call, I'm keeping this short, she helped save a life, right? It's a very powerful thing for a young person to experience at such a young age. Erin's 18 years old and in high school at this time. Now, Erin, along with 10 other explorers, have all been accepted and are all going to the Firefighter 1 program up in Fairbanks, and they're actually in class right now and hope to get their Firefighter 1 here in the next couple of weeks. Erin's ultimate goal is to no longer be a military or go into the military, but to come back and be a firefighter paramedic with the Anchorage Fire Department. Right. So that's just one quick story or a couple quick examples. But we do a lot of empowering and growing of our young persons here in Anchorage through this program. And then the other component about the explorers that's very important is the advisors. None of us are compensated. I don't make overtime. Neither does Dane or any of the other 13 active advisors we have right now, which is one of the beauties of this program. So it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything extra. This is all done through volunteerism and through the good hearts of the people that are in the Anchorage Fire Department right now. Next slide, please. So 40 years. What has this done for us? How the Anchorage community and the Anchorage Fire Department has benefited. So this is a excellent recruiting and feeder program into the Anchorage Fire Department. I don't have the data to show how many people over the last 40 years, because a lot of it is hearsay and we haven't really been good about keeping records. But at this time right now, of our 300 plus firefighters, paramedics, captains, battalion chiefs, about 60 of us are alumni from this program. So it's about 20%. So it's pretty good. And then many of our explorers display leadership at every rank. Of our 9 battalion chiefs at this time, 4 of them are alumni of this program. Of the 5 people that work for the fire department in this room right now, 3 of us are alumni from this program. And you can see us throughout every single rank: battalion chiefs, captains, engineers, firefighters, paramedics, so forth. We just hired another couple of people this last academy that are alumni from this program. And so it's really exciting to see kind of what the program does and how it spreads through. And this big foundation that was laid way before mine and Dane's time is really paying dividends and allows people to come back and really help to grow. Another thing that is important to note is that Anchorage Fire Explorers is very big on community service. And so a lot of the stuff doesn't just help us internally, it goes out into the community as well throughout the year and throughout time. Next slide, please. Make sure you're in time for questions. So very important, we're growing. From 2 years ago, we had 17 explorers, and we were ready as a department and as the advisors of this program to really grow and expand the program. So 62% from 2 years ago, which was 17. This last year, we had 34, and this year we're going to have 44 explorers. So due to facility constraint and then volunteerism, and we kind of feel like that's the sweet spot between the amount of people that apply and the amount of people that we can actually house effectively and teach and mentor. So 44 this next year. we're going to be pretty excited. Like I said, we're going to be one of the biggest Explorer programs in the nation, and my hope is one of the most robust. Growing diversity. If you look at the two pie charts on your left, this is very exciting. My understanding is that you all had a presentation from a young woman named Megan McLean. She just got recently promoted to captain in the Anchorage Fire Department, and she spearheaded the Northern Lights and Sirens all girls camp a couple years ago. And then almost immediately, right after that, we had a whole bunch of girls that applied for the fire department, which is exciting. It wasn't too long ago that women were told they couldn't be firefighters, and Megan's working hard to change that, and we're here to support her efforts as well. And so it shows this last year that 44% of our ranks were female, which is very exciting. It's more so than we've ever had before. And then the second pie chart just below that is a much more diverse pie chart that shows how much more we're targeting and hitting other kids in other schools. Interestingly, Diamond, Service, and South High School were the main schools that really knew about the program. It wasn't so much that those were the ones that were targeted, but those were just the schools that knew the most about the program. Speaking anecdotally, when I was a sophomore in high school, I went to my career guidance counselor, and she said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Be a firefighter." And she goes, "What about the Explorers?" Right? So these schools just knew more about our program beforehand. It wasn't so much that they're targeted. Now we have a kid from almost every single school or homeschool program in the Anchorage community, with the exception of Diamond High School. I haven't quite figured out how to how to get into that school just yet, but we're working on it. And so our diversity, both our diversity through males and females, and then just minority wise is expanding and growing. Increased community services last year, like I said, that's growing exponentially. We do a lot of that piggybacking off of the IAFF local. They do a lot of community service. We help them with that. Very big. We just became a nonprofit this last year, which is super exciting and has opened so many doors and possibilities for us as a program. We used to survive. I wouldn't say we thrived, but we used to survive off of the funds and the dues that Explorers would pay in every year. It's about $100, $120, and we would always sponsor a kid. We never turned away a kid that could not afford to be in the program. That's how we got them their uniforms. That's how we got them their books, etc. Becoming a nonprofit this last year has been massive. It's opened up donations. And like I said, or like I'm showing in this slide below, Kaladi Brothers, about 10 or so days. And Tim, who's the owner of Kaladi, has been very discreet. He does not want me to say how much he's donated, but it was substantial. And it's going to help us thrive this next year. And then we were just awarded $15,000 through the mayor's grant just a few days ago. That's more money than we've ever had before, at least in recent history. And through all the historians that work for the fire department who were part of the program and who used to lead the program, this is a lot of money. And so we're growing. And so I would ask that all you assembly members and anyone else that's in the Anchorage community and that cares about the Anchorage community that's listening, be proud. Be proud that we're an Explorer program that's large and that's growing and that's got a good future ahead of it. Any questions that I can answer for anyone about what the Anchorage Fire Explorers is, please.
Oh, great. Yeah. And just a heads up for members, we're a little short on time. So, but yes, I have a couple people in the queue. Mr. Martinez is first.
Thank you, Chair. The most important element that or thing that we should be building here in our city and in our state is the cradle to career and beyond pipeline. And so I appreciate that the Explorers really have come along that pipeline perspective and thinking about how many go through, how many get jobs. So to the chief, I know we spoke a while ago about what your work at Fairbanks. And so I love that relationship back to the university. I would just now make sure that you are flagging that ASD is moving into a career technical education disposition. Wall-to-wall CTE is coming up. Academies driven. And so you have a real opportunity to think about the pipeline all the way through our school district intentionally. And so, and just to the question of diversity is by design. And so you can have things luckily happen, but intentionality is really important. And so as we see this as this pipeline, I just want to celebrate that work, really understand that it is a pipeline opportunity for the municipality so that we can all hear it. And APD, if you're listening, Health Department, if you're listening, all the departments, municipality, if you're listening, we need to have a MOA Explorers program across all of these different departments. Fundamentally, the pipeline that you all are laying out, I think, is critical. If there's ways that I know from East Anchorage, I got the 2 most diverse high schools in America in my assembly district. Those principles are phenomenal, and I'd love to be able to amplify this work in our district. But anything we can continue to do to think about this as a pipeline and replicate it across the municipal workforce, I think is phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Cross?
Yeah, thank you. And in your Explorer handbook, page 24 with the facts is fantastic. I really appreciate that. So I just read through that while we were going through here. I just see the 2 barriers to entry. One you had mentioned that you covered, which was the $150 payable to the Learning for Life. You had said that if they couldn't financially meet that, you've never denied somebody. So there's assistance there. So that's spectacular. Let us know what else we can do to assist with that. The second thing just reminds me is it says it's Tuesday night from 6 to 9 is, what about transportation assistance? I imagine some kids is from a single household, a single parent household, and they're working. Is there a need for transportation? Do you have children that like to participate, but perhaps, being that it's at Tuesday nights and they have a parent that works, or what does that look like? Any transportation struggles that we can be assisting with or that we can be looking toward our community to help resolve?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Cross. So yes, we've had problems with that before in the past. One thing that we did this last year, this is before we were a nonprofit, and this is just a little show of the awesomeness that is the Anchorage Fire Department that I get the honor to be a part of. We had a young lady who couldn't afford gas. And so several firefighters from a couple different stations and a couple different crews all chipped in $20 to $50 each, and they gave her a huge card, a gas card, basically to help her get to school. That was just out of the kindness of many of my coworkers that I get to work with. To address the bigger problem, it's funny that you mentioned that because I had that struggle when I was a kid in high school. And so that's near and dear to my heart. So to address that this next year, what we're doing is we're going to have a much more robust knowledge of where everyone lives. Because before in the past, it's kind of been, oh, you live near me, I'll give you a ride. Something like that would happen organically, just to help each other out. But this next year, what we're going to do is we're going to, now that we have nonprofit status, now that we have funds and money, and gas is expensive, much more so than when I was in high school, we're going to give out a lot more gas cards, right? Just to make sure that these kids have that ability, have that ability to be able to come to the meetings, because that's important. We do have a standard for them to be able to attend X number of meetings. And then if they're not meeting them, we just have an attendance requirement. So we'll kind of check on them. Hey, how you doing? Everything okay at work? Is there something that's holding you back from being able to come? Again, because I had those struggles. And so we're addressing them. And now that we have that nonprofit status, it's much more feasible to make sure that any and all kids get the opportunity to come and experience what the Explorers is.
Excellent. Yeah. And since you start at 14, there's probably a small percentage that can't drive at all. So, just making sure they're aware of what we can do to make sure that they're able to attend. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. And actually, I'm going to take a pause just for a second and check with the audience. Who here is wanting to testify at the end of the meeting? Can I just see a show of hands so I get a sense of how much time we need? It's got one. Just one. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Great. Thank you for the presentation. That was great. Chief, do you want to go on to your second item?
Yes. With your indulgence and in the interest of time, it would be we'd be agreeable to postponing the Celebrate trial discussion until a future meeting.
Great. Thanks.
And then just one editorial comment. This program has grown largely because of the leadership of Firefighter Russell here and Inspector Wiseman and the other advisors in the department that have made it grown intentionally. And it's an example of what happens if somebody has a vision and you let them pursue it and I just get out of their way. And I would invite any of you on any Tuesday night that's not an assembly meeting to stop in at the Fire Training Center and just see for yourself what goes on there during the school year. The last item on our agenda is just a very brief mention of we recently took delivery of 2 Rosenbauer aerials, and with my gratitude to the Assembly for appropriating the money that enabled us to purchase this equipment, they'll be going into service over the next couple of weeks. On the 23rd at 1:30 p.m. at Fire Station 3, Truck 3 will be ceremoniously placed into service. That's at 430 Burgaw Street. And I know that Assembly Chair Constant and Assembly Member Bronga plan to attend, since this truck will be serving their areas. The other truck will go into service in Spenard. And so once we have a date for that, I'll share that with you. But we all are welcome to join us for the ceremonial pushing in of those apparatus. So when we get a new truck, we gather community members and stakeholders and firefighters, and we push it into the fire station. It's 79,600 pounds, so we need a lot of people. And with that, I'll yield my time and go.
Thank you, Chief. I don't see any additional questions, so thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the presentation today. That's right. And do we have anybody here from the Department of Law? Yeah, why don't you guys come on up? We have on our agenda, you're going to give us a brief staffing update. Welcome.
Morning. Dustin Pearson, acting city prosecutor. I don't see anyone from civil down here, but as far as staffing wise, not much has changed since the last time I was here, except we've lost a couple more attorneys. Effective Monday, we will have 10 out of 16 positions filled for prosecutors. We are still at 8 out of 15 staff, meaning secretaries and clerks. So there hasn't been much movement in a good direction on that front. We are doing what we can. We're sort of in a transition phase as to what's going to be happening long-term, as far as whether I'll still be acting or not, or who will be in charge or whatnot. But as we settle those, we'll let you all know. I assume there's questions in general, and I'm happy to field those. I didn't bring slides, but I'll start doing that in the future if it comes to that. This becomes my job. But what can I do for you all?
No, I appreciate you being here, and if you could just if you could expand a little bit on your efforts to recruit and what you see as the major challenges in front of you right now.
So number one, I'm not a recruiter. I'm not an HR guy. I'm a prosecutor. And so if you want someone to go down to jail court or do trials and all that, I can do that all day long. But as far as recruiting, I have reached out to every professional attorney that I have worked with previously or done business with. I think it's a pretty small legal community in this town, especially in the criminal side of things. So we're reaching out as best we can. And I don't know, I know as far as the staff positions, we have a half dozen or so postings that are working their way through HR that should be live and posted in the next week or two, is my understanding. And so filling those seats is more of a procedural sort of thing, going through NeoGov and all that, and getting the requisitions from HR and such. As far as the attorneys, that's more of if someone comes to me and says, I want to work here, my understanding is that the executive portion of that is fairly simpler.
Yeah.
But I think I might have said last time, it's not a magic solution. If we get someone that wants to be here, we have 2 newer attorneys who are just starting to come online. As far as they've been to enough court hearings, they've been overseen enough that we can start to give them their own caseload, and they can start bailing water with the rest of us as far as being assigned their own section of the case.
Great. I have a question for Ms. Brawley.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. And first, I sympathize, and I wish that we did have more staff, because I know that's really hard on the staff who are there. I guess I wonder, you mentioned, I think you said in the last meeting, each attorney has about a caseload of 600. Has that changed?
I think I said, well, I was speaking to my own personal experience. The caseload I had when I had stepped out to do this acting role was I had 300 plus. And that was a DV caseload. The DV caseloads have historically been smaller than the general trial caseloads. General trial caseloads consist of shoplifts and trespasses and OUIs. it's not that they're easier, but they're less time sinks in the sense that you don't have victims in every single case that you're supposed to keep in contact with. They're a little less complicated as far as trials go, as far as working with an individual victim. When you do a DUI trial, you just have a bunch of cops that show up, and then we can teach people a little simpler how to do that. DV cases tend to be more complicated. So the general trial caseloads, I would imagine, are significantly larger than 300. But I was speaking to my personal experience of I used to have 150, maybe 200 on any given month. That had increased over the last year significantly between SB 91 and between staffing changes and our pieces of the pie getting bigger as more and more attorneys left. That when I stepped into this role, my number was well in excess of 300. I think it was like 350, 340, something like that. And I'd never had numbers that big. And me personally, and that's what I'm asking of my people, is to do these sizes of caseloads that haven't been historically expected of people. And that's just becoming the norm now.
And just one quick follow too. So even if we were fully staffed, I guess I know in the past there's been backlogs at the state court system too, which is the other piece of kind of, cases moving through. So is that still the case, or has that gotten better?
That would be pretty much specation on my part. It's hard to tell. It's because what I can tell you is it's somewhat of a feedback loop in the sense that things got clogged up through COVID, and we were fully staffed at that time. But it's hard to attribute where the clog is now, whether it's just that we're so shorthanded and our people are trying to push a bigger ball, or whether that ball is just huge and it would be bad either which way. But they're both feeding into each other at a certain point. So I wouldn't be able to tell you which one's the primary issue. But the court system is still very much bogged down. It's not that the court system is operating as usual and we're having trouble keeping up. The court system has humongous calendars that they're not used to having. And us trying to move our end of it isn't working as cleanly as it could because we don't have that many hands on deck. But it's not 100% us, I guess is what I would say.
Thanks. One more, and then I think we're going to move on to audience participation. Mr. Cross.
Yeah, it's just, if you do the numbers, it's alarming because if you figure 16 positions, 4 openings, they were down to 12 and down to 10. We basically have a workforce that's basically each individual is having to take on about 46% more than what their standard workload should be. And the loss of 2 positions means they just increased another 20%. So when you just do the math and the metrics determining 300 to 350 cases an individual, it can be exasperating. So not only is there not only do we have this need of making sure that we fill these vacancies, but just not exasperating our current workforce so that they're just not work mules. And then that feels, and we feel that, and I'm sure the APD feels that, and all the other, because timely resolving these issues in a timely manner is a responsibility we have, not only to the individual who's facing trial, but also to the people, to our residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salt.
Just to tie on his comment, Mr. Cross's comments, another way to look at this is how can we work to reduce the number of cases instead of add more staff? You don't have to answer that. It's more rhetorical, but.
No, that's a reality that as a person who's acting here, my job is to right the ship as best I can and to keep my people happy and supported as best I can. Ultimately, the policy, the only thing we can control is, like I think I said before, APD is the one that brings us the cases. We don't have any control of that as far as what gets referred to us. So we do have 100% control of what we decide to prosecute and invest our resources in. And it's not a comfortable decision to make, and it's not one I've been asked to make as of yet, but we are in control of how we target our efforts and all that, in the sense that we can just decide not to pursue certain types of things. That's not ideal, and it's not something that as prosecutors we're wired to want to do out the gate, because we're here to enforce the law and hold people accountable for bad choices. And so no one wants to be in the position to say that we can't do our job, because we want to do our job. And just to be crystal clear, our people are doing their jobs. That's not a thing that I don't think has been approached to us. Our people are doing the best that they can with what they got. And if it comes to that, we'll have that conversation. And ultimately what we want is to have enough people on board that we don't have to make those choices as far as deciding not to do things that should be done just because we don't have the people to do them. So that's not the choice we're making now. We're doing everything as though we have the ability to do it, because we do. And we're going to do it as best we can for as long as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Thank
I appreciate it. Before we go into audience participation, I just want to put a note on the record. I had a brief conversation yesterday with Reverend Marbury, who represents the Anchorage Community Police Relations Task Force. I don't believe he's here, but just wanted to make a note that that he had shared with the Assembly last night that that this group is having a bit of a challenge in terms of their relationship with the administration and would like to figure out ways to improve that. So we're working with him on that. Do we have someone from Office of Emergency Management here? Do you want to give a quick update before we move on? Thanks.
Hi, good morning. My name is Amanda Loach. I'm from the Office of Emergency Management. In the interest of time, my briefing is complete in your documents, so you can check it out if you'd like. Just a couple of things to draw your attention to. I need to put my glasses on here. Hang on. Okay, just thanks to Member Bronga for the outreach on the University Lake oil spill. We did have a response that we facilitated interagency coordination to in June. So thank you to Member Bronga for her participation in that. Finishing up the after action and improvement planning coordination this week for that. We have officially distributed the emergency operations plan. If you guys would like a hard copy of that, please reach out to us and we can get that to you. For those of you that might be involved in continuity of operations planning, we're facilitating events and workshop on that in September. So if you'd like to participate in that, we'll be happy to connect you. Moving forward, there's a training opportunity for leadership, crisis leadership, and senior official workshop tomorrow and the next day with our partners at Anchorage School District. For those of you that might be interested in that, let me know if you don't know how to connect. Otherwise, just show up at the Ed Center tomorrow at 8 a.m. We do have a large Upper Cook Inlet tsunami assessment study coming out from the state of Alaska. The release is scheduled right now for August the 16th. A press release went out on that yesterday, so you should see quite a bit on the Upper Cook Inlet Tsunami Assessment Study coming out in the next few weeks. Happy to have some new science on that. There's a couple appropriations coming your way from CDBG from the earthquake. You should see that soon with seismic risk analysis and other mitigation planning. And then from the CDC Health Equity Grant, there will be a after action and improvement planning process for COVID-19 that I'm sure that some of you will want to see. That's coming your way as well as an appropriation. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. I just wanted to, one item that you mentioned that's in the update that you didn't mention out loud, and under mitigation, item number, under A, outreach, item number 2, language access, website complete, extending to further outreach. Can you just talk a little bit about language access and what you mean by that?
Yes, so a few years back, we began just updating our website to make sure it was more accessible overall. And we've completed that update. And so you should find that to be a little bit more accessible whenever you frequent our website. And then as well, we have some funds to go to events left over. So to roll that out to the community. So right now we're just doing outreach.
Great. Yeah, no, the website looks better. And I was involved with when we converted the website and provided that Google Translate button. So the more language access, the more ability we have in printed material, especially in outreach material, to reach the diversity of languages in our community, the better. Thank you.
And we did just finish a UBIC translation as well for a lot of our materials. So we're keeping going with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Is there an objection to extending the meeting by 5 minutes by members? Seeing no objection, I'm extending the meeting by 5 minutes. Sir, would you like to come up and share your thoughts? I think probably easiest to use one of these microphones right on the end of the table here. State your name for the record and your district in Anchorage, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Lincoln Swan, and I live in Midtown here in Anchorage. I was born and raised in Palmer, and I lived in Anchorage for a number of years before living out of state and coming back about a year ago. Thank you to the body. Thank you for your time, for taking the time to listen to me as a member of the public. I have deep concerns over the slow implementation of the body cam program. I'd like to share a little bit of statistics. I would also like to share some personal experience just about the importance as a member of the community. I'd like to start off by saying I don't hate law enforcement. I actually recognize that it can occupy a really important segment in society. What I'm deeply concerned about is a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. Of course, we can't have accountability for actions if we don't know what they are. And that's of deep concern to me as a citizen of the city of Anchorage. If we take a look at some basic statistics, as early as 2016, over 60% of PDs across the country had body-worn cameras. This has been an issue since before George Floyd. This is of concern to us before George Floyd. Trying to tie the two of them together does not make sense to me on any level. Kind of moving forward a little bit, I heard some concerns about implementation from a funding perspective. As an individual and as a citizen, that just doesn't hold water. We know that the union and the PD were negotiating until very recently over policy concerns, internal policy concerns. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I understand that there are certain features of our Constitution that are a little bit different than how things are done in the lower 48. To say that that is an excuse for a 3-year delay minimum, to me, it's inexcusable. We talk about accountability. If this were being applied to any other industry in our city, say, for example, bar owners, if voters decided that it made sense to require bar owners to have testing strips so that people who are sitting and enjoying themselves can test to see if a drink has been adulterated, the voters vote on it, it's mandated for them to apply it. If 3 years in, they're saying, well, we're just not sure about how to distribute them to our employees or what we should do if it comes back positive. We don't know about our liability and going to the police department if we think that a drink has been adulterated. That's not the intention of it. The intention of it is to protect citizens by having transparency and accountability. So I think that there have been a lot of valuable conversations that are being had, and I'm not trying to say that any one person is accountable for this gap. What I am saying is that I hope this body agrees that it's time to take it seriously. It's time to put some real measures in place. They're saying, okay, after 3 years, we're going to do a rollout of 30 cameras by November. When are we going to see 80% of the force? When are we going to have the ability for the public to request and to publish as appropriate media that is in the public interest, which is a constitutionally enshrined right? Thank you, body.
Thank you so much for your time. Would anybody else like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none. Oh, you are. Yes. Go ahead and share your name and where you live in Anchorage for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Emily Klock, and I live in District 3. APD is the last major police department in Alaska to implement body-worn cameras. The Alaska State Troopers implemented cameras less than a year after receiving funding. Police departments in Fairbanks, Juneau, Kenai, and Soldotna have all been using cameras for at least 5 years. APD originally said that body-worn cameras would be implemented by the end of 2021. And since that date has come and gone, we've not heard a timeline, even though Anchorage residents and our elected officials present today have asked over and over and over. Now, Chief Curl stated in a work session last Friday with you all that full implementation will likely not happen until the end of 2024. That's over a year and a half from now, and over 3.5 years since we voted to fund the cameras. In 2019, Bashar Hassan was killed by the Anchorage Police Department while experiencing a mental health crisis. There happened to be a dash camera capturing footage during the incident, and it took until 2022 for the footage to be released to the public. After that release, over 100 people attended a rally to support his family and express their outrage. A wrongful death lawsuit filed by Bashar Hassan's family was thrown out in May of this year. Justice delayed is justice denied. This incident shows why body-worn cameras are so crucial. And the current body-worn camera policy has no automatic release of footage in critical incidents. An ordinance addressing this oversight was pulled off the agenda of last night's assembly meeting with no opportunity for public comment. Public safety committee meetings like this one are not as accessible to the public, especially when they are canceled at the last minute with no public notice like this meeting was just last week. The public needs to be heard on this issue. It's been over 2.5 years since the vote, and today is the first time we've heard a timeline of how and why this process has proceeded so painfully slowly. The Alaska Black Caucus sued the city of Anchorage over the failure to implement body-worn cameras on April 19th this year, and by the next day, APD announced that they would move forward with implementation after being informed by the municipal legal team that they can implement cameras while arbitration is going on. As Mr. Perez-Verdia mentioned, this is the issue that caused the biggest delay in this entire process. Why did it take a lawsuit for APD to finally progress on this? Finally, I want to mention that I heard the report from MIT at the beginning of this meeting, and I want to sincerely thank those incredible workers for what they do and thank the city for supporting that program. I think if we invest in more programs that support people with mental health issues, instead of investing in criminalizing them, our community will be far better off. When used properly, a program like MIT can save a life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. I actually I've been notified that we do have one other person on the phone. Can I? Is there any objection to extending for 5 additional minutes? Seeing none, we are extended for 5 additional minutes. I know I have someone else on the phone. Would you like to introduce yourself and share where in Anchorage you're from? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, let me know if you can or can't hear me, but my name is Mercedes Arciniega. I am from West Anchorage District 3, representing myself today. Just wanted to speak as well in regards to the body cam policy and implementation. I do wonder some of the comments that were made by the chief and just like information that's come out from the police department. First, I think it's kind of unnecessary to bring up the comments about, well, you know, we had a chief that said this and that's just, you know, unreasonable, or they didn't really know what they're talking about. It just kind of gives the impression that you're just kind of passing the buck off to that problem onto the next person. I don't think anyone really cares at this point. It's whoever is the chief right now. This is your burden. This is your administration. You're under this administration, this is your department. So I think just owning it in future reference is probably a better move moving forward with communicating on this issue. Second, I'm a little confused by some of the rough timeline that's being given, considering, as we've been hearing from folks earlier testifying about major police departments already in Alaska that are using it. You know, we have Fairbanks, Juneau, Kenai, Soldotna for the last 5 years using it. So it almost feels like reinventing the wheel of service processes. And it's not lost on me that we have to recognize the size of the community and differences that we have to weigh out. But again, it just feels like a further delay in certain issues. I make room for the fact that, you know, political processes have a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, a lot of points and stop, you know, not going to provide a progressive flow of what we're hoping to see in implementation. However, I think when you have the public still asking questions or being confused or in the dark, that burden doesn't fall necessarily on the public to be like, okay, you need to go and print this information out. If that's not already easily accessible and that's not being disseminated from government officials and entities as well as the police department themselves, that's the burden that falls on those bodies. That should be able to, you should be able to communicate those things and provide that clarity. Otherwise, people wouldn't be asking these questions. You know, that's what I think it gets to the heart of the matter, is just being clearer and being more transparent, having better, you know, more than ambiguity and vagueness every time that we have these kinds of meetings or we have this public release affair. As well, I think that that there's an opportunity to look like, basically, it feels like pushing a process feels like no one cares. And I know that maybe that's not the intention, but that's the impact that gives out to the general public. So I just consider that sense of urgency will provide better confidence for the public into the police department and with this policy moving forward. So it's some food for thought to consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Is there anyone else on the phone who'd like to testify?
Yes, this is Pastor Marbury with the Anchorage Community Police Task Force.
Great.
Let you know I was listening on and curious to go forward with this area.
Great. Would you like to? Why don't you go ahead? Go ahead. You have three minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. Like I was saying at the assembly yesterday, I wanted to improve our relationship with the municipality and the assembly and the mayor, and going forth with the task force, doing what it's been doing since 1985, and make sure that our agreement is being met and how we go forward with that. So I was looking to have some type of dialogue back and forth and going forth with it. All right. So I have my information already given. So I'm looking to whoever is involved with dealing with our group as a task force. The chief has been very faithful in making the meetings and giving us information. And I've been to one of these safety meetings when it was held Wednesday night at the mayor's office on the 8th floor. And they were doing at that time exactly what the task force is doing in getting data and information for the community. So I appreciate the in-depth information that was going on today about this body cam. And I've been keeping up with that also, along with fentanyl epidemic and other things that was going on in our community that need to be addressed. Okay, thank you for the time. I'll go forward with trying to be on board with these meetings now.
Thank you, Reverend, for your testimony. And I'll just repeat what I said before. I'd like to build a stronger relationship between this committee and the committee that you serve on, as well as try to facilitate an improved relationship between your committee and the administration. So happy to talk with you more about that. Anybody? Yeah. Anybody else on the phone who'd like to testify at this time? Okay, hearing none, and I don't see anybody else in the audience. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for a good meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.